There are these two young fish swimming along, and they happen to meet an older fish swimming the other way, who nods at them and says, "Morning, boys, how's the water?"
My bad. That should fix it. Right? Please tell me that fixed it. Okay. I clicked something. That was my bad. Could you hear the speech when he was giving it? Could you hear him, though? Up to what the hell is water? Oh, crap. Okay. Well, just read this part through there. Because that's where then I paused it. Alright. Read this. Let's read this chunk. I think I fixed it. For next time. Because I only did the first paragraph and then I paused. Because I found a rhetorical device. I think so. Is that better? Can you see that? Okay. So this was given at a college graduation. I'm actually going to start here. Because the rest is just an introduction, and for our purposes, that's not really important. So he gives this little anecdote about these two young fish swimming along, and they happen to meet the older fish swimming along the way. He nods at them and says, "Morning, boys, how's the water?" And the two young fish swim on for a bit. Then eventually one of them looks over at the other and goes, "What the hell is water?" So if we're looking at the rhetorical device list, and I should probably pull the big one. But this is an anecdote because if you look at the definition of anecdote, it's a short little story designed to teach a lesson. I mean, we don't know what the lesson is, but a key to an anecdote, too, is that it's usually humorous. I mean, this is funny because the fish, I don't know what kind of fish they were. He never tells you. But you would expect a fish to know what water is, yes? I mean, that's like common sense. So there's also, you've got a little bit of irony here. Maybe satire. because you don't know where he's going with this. Oh my God, Danny. Yeah, probably. All right. We're gonna keep going.
This is a standard requirement of U.S. commencement speeches, the deployment of didactic little parable-ish stories. The story thing turns out to be one of the better, less bullshitty conventions of the genre. But if you're worried that I plan to present myself here as the wise older fish explaining what water is to you younger fish, please don't be. I am not the wise old fish. The point of the fish story is merely that the most obvious, important realities are often the ones that are hardest to see and talk about. Stated as an English sentence, of course, this is just a banal platitude. But the fact is that in the day-to-day trenches of adult existence, banal platitudes can have a life or death importance. Or so I wish to suggest to you on this dry and lovely morning.
Okay. So you have a couple of things going on in here. You've got some colloquialisms. I lost my place. Oh, here. Parable-ish. You know, he's using like lower language to make it more accessible to his audience. Whoops. There's some catch creases, which is this. So that's on this list. Yeah, that's in the top 10. It's a big one. It's when you purposely screw up the way that you're spelling or using a word. A lot of times like a pun, but not always. He uses. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Parable-ish was the catch creases. Bullshitty is the colloquialism. It's here. You get it? Then there's the device where you answer your own rhetorical question. I think I put the other one on the big list, so check. Oh, wait. Yes, I did. Okay. We also have some aposes, which is to call attention to something by dismissing it. And he does that here. If you're worried I plan to present myself as the wise old fish, don't be. I'm not the wise old fish. You see how he brings it up just to, like, say, but don't worry about this. It's not important. That adds to his ethos. So that's exactly what we're going to say here. We're going to put the device in. He brings up, like, a concern that the audience might have in order to reassure it. That, in and of itself, is a rhetorical device. And that makes him more credible, because it's obvious that you're listening to me, or that you're thinking about your audience, I should say. If you're addressing possible concerns they might have. And I'm more willing to trust you as a result. Does that make sense? Or no? I think it comes up again, so maybe a second example will help clarify a little bit too. I know these are even more difficult for you because I don't think you learned them. Like, I don't think you were taught all of them. So this is probably the hardest thing that you will do all year because you don't know grammar. And Danny, I'm not just talking to you. Nobody does. Not really. So without knowing grammar, a lot of these rely on sentence structure, on syntax. And if you don't understand how that works, then it makes it difficult to find it. Yeah. You probably did this one, rhetorical question. I mean, I did 3 types, but it's not just yours, though. Everybody's grammar is in the toilet, if it makes you feel better. The entire world. The United States, nobody learns grammar anymore, so don't worry about it. Well, yes, worry about it, but you're not alone. Okay. We have also some polysyndon in that chunk, which is conjunctions before each word in the list. Where did we do that? Actually, that's the opposite. I don't know why. So eventually, oh, that's Peter. That's good to know. Eventually, you'll get to know what these are. You'll just know the definition of some of them. And you won't learn all of them. Even I don't know all of them. I keep my list handy. I actually have it here too. But I'm pulling it up on the screen so that way you can see what I'm doing too. But I keep the list in front of me so that way I can refer to it in case I need it. I mean, obviously on a test you can't, but in real life you won't get a test where you'll be asked to define them. Eventually you get to know what they look like. And you can notice when something looks off, like in the day-to-day trenches of adult existence, banal platitudes have... Oh wait, no, I got ahead of myself. The point of the fish story is that the most obvious, ubiquitous, important realities, there's a word missing here, are often the ones that are hardest to see and talk about. This is ascendant, because there should be a comma and an and. Obvious, important, and there's a word missing. I guess I deleted it when I was like copying and pasting the speech in. Is the leaving out of conjunctions. The word and should be there and it's not. So, that's why that's this one. I give it a couple of cliches. I'm going to share you two on this too, because you guys are the only ones in here, so... So then you guys can actually be in the document too. and I'm not gonna, oh, did I do it to the wrong one? Whoops. No, that's how it is, Danny. I did it right. You're annoying. Alright. I'm not, now that one I did like ridiculously. I'm not gonna stop and do that many for every paragraph, especially because this thing is kind of long. But it is like my favorite speech ever, so.
Of course, the main requirement of speeches like this is that I'm supposed to talk about your liberal arts education's meaning, to try to explain why the degree you're about to receive has actual human value instead of just a material payoff. So let's talk about the single most pervasive cliche in the commencement speech genre, which is that a liberal arts education is not so much about filling you up with knowledge as it is about, quote, teaching you how to think. If you're like me as a student, you've never liked hearing this, and you tend to feel a bit insulted by the claim that you've needed anybody to teach you how to think, since the fact that you even got admitted to a college this good seems like proof that you already know how to think. But I'm going to posit to you that the liberal arts cliche turns out not to be insulting at all, because the really significant education in thinking that we're supposed to get in a place like this isn't really about the capacity to think, but rather about the choice of what to think about. If your total freedom of choice regarding what to think about seems too obvious to waste time discussing, I'd ask you to think about fish and water and to bracket for just a few minutes your skepticism about the value of the totally obvious.
So. Hi, Peter Scott. What if it has to be? Oh, it didn't. Okay. Leave them open, except Brian didn't need them. Okay, the main requirement of speeches like this. Are you guys in the doc? Like, can I make this a little smaller so that way I can have the device list open too? Oops. But see, what happens when I'm in here, I can't get the, I don't see the chat. So if you have questions, don't use the chat, use the, if you have questions, don't use the chat, use the, like, text me through Remind. Because I'll be able to get to it much faster that way. Okay? Because I'm going to go into presentation mode, so that way it's much better. Just go in here. This is so annoying. Thank you. It's a bit like that one. Repetition of one or more words after an interval of another. Explain. Oh, no. Nope. Let's go back. Not that. So I actually think this might be just basic parallel structure. Oops. Yeah, I think this is just basic parallel structure here. So, I'm gonna go ahead and I don't know. I don't know. Did it stop snowing? Because what it does up here by me is never a good indicator of what it's doing down there. Then we're probably going to have school tomorrow. Unless it's supposed to start again. And I'll check. Hold on. I heard that too. I heard we're getting snow tomorrow. I didn't hear anything about Wednesday. But now it looks like it looks like tomorrow will be okay, and there's the potential for something on Wednesday. But that could change. Because it's still snowing here. Like, by me, so. Okay. That's the only one I'm going to point out in that one. And you know what? To save time, I think I'll just read through it. Here's another didactic little story. There are these two guys sitting together in a bar in the remote Alaskan wilderness. One of the guys is religious, the other's an atheist. And the two are arguing about the existence of God with that special intensity that comes after about the fourth beer. And the atheist says, look, it's not like I don't have actual reasons for not believing in God. It's not like I haven't experimented with the whole God and prayer thing. Just last month, I got caught away from the camp in that terrible blizzard. I was totally lost and couldn't see a thing, and it was 50 below, so I tried it. I fell to my knees in the snow and cried out, oh God, if there is a God, I'm lost in the blizzard, and I'm gonna die if you don't help me. And now, in the bar, the religious guy looks at the atheist all puzzled. Well, you must believe now, he says. After all, here you are, alive. The atheist just rolls his eyes. No, man. All that was a couple of Eskimos that happened to come wandering by and show me the way back to camp. So, once again, this is just another anecdote. Hey, let me ask, if I do this, can you see it? In the dock, Peter. Guess not. Okay. It's easy to run this story through a standard liberal arts analysis. It's the exact same experience can mean two totally different things to two totally different people, given those people's two different belief templates and two different ways of constructing meaning from experience. Okay, this is a big one because I saw the word two like 5 times. Like 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, 4. Well, I was wrong. That is a diacope. And that's the nifty little thing. Presentation mode annoying. That's this. Repetition of one or more words after the interval of one or more other words. And it's usually within the context of his story. And what the effect of this is that it puts extra emphasis on the word to. It gets you to pay attention to it, because by repeating it, ugh, I did spell it right. Okay, Peter, message Danny or, hold on, let me try something. Peter, I'm sending you a text. Because we prize tolerance and diversity of belief, nowhere in our liberal arts analysis do we want to claim that one guy's interpretation is true and the other guy's is false or bad. Which is fine, except we also never end up talking just about... Okay. Which is fine, except we also never end up talking just about where these individual templates and beliefs come from. Meanwhile, where they come from was inside the two guys. As if a person's most basic orientation towards the world and the meaning of his experience were somehow just hardwired, like height or shoe size, or automatically absorbed from culture, like language. As if how we construct meaning were not actually a matter of personal, intentional choice. Plus, there's the whole matter of arrogance. The non-religious guy is totally certain in his dismissal of the possibility of the passing Eskimos. The non-religious guy is totally certain in his dismissal of the possibility that the passing Eskimos had anything to do with his prayer for help. True, there are plenty of religious people who seem arrogant and certain of their interpretations too. They're probably even more repulsive than atheists, at least to most of us. But religious dogmatism's problem is exactly the same as the story's unbeliever. Why uncertainty? A closed-mindedness that amounts to an imprisonment so total that the prisoner doesn't even know he's locked up. So this isn't on my mini list, but it is a rhetorical device, and it might be one actually, Danny, that you did. This is a concession. Where it's like, okay, yeah, there are people who do this, but this is why they're still wrong. Like, this is why my point is still valid. And again, that adds to the credibility of the speech. It makes it more believable because you've pointed out the other guy's argument and explained why yours is still valid in spite of it. Or perhaps because of it. The point here is that I think this is one part of teaching. Blah. The point here is that I think this is one part of what teaching me how to think clearly is really supposed to mean. To be just a little less arrogant. To have just a little critical awareness about myself and my certainties. Because a huge percentage of the stuff that I tend to be automatically certain of, it turns out, is totally wrong and deluded. I have learned this the hard way, as I predict you graduates will too. To have to be... These two are examples of that's because in a lot of ways it is. The allegory, you are right. The allegory of the cave is it's talking about the other, the outsider, and one's relationship to him. Um, the Eskimo is the outsider to the guy that gets rescued. There's some overlap, yeah. But I think that making the connection to the Algor of the Cave for this purpose, I don't know if it's going to add anything to his argument. I also don't know how much you know about that, so I don't want to, like, overwhelm you. How much did you study? Like, what do you know about the allegory of the cave? History, here we go. Oh, wait, that's the end. Hold on, I gotta go back to this page here. Okay, well, like what? Can you give me a little more information? I'm so confused. This is an afro. Okay, but like, did you read it in connection with a specific short story? Like Albert Camus' The Stranger? Or did you just read The Allegory of the Cave? And then what did you talk about when you read it? Because there's a lot of levels to that. It's very complex. Especially when it comes to literature, because a lot of things in literature are connected to that. So, I don't want to overwhelm you. Oh, okay. Well, until you've actually looked at it, now see, look here. We've got another example of the one where he says, "Oh, this is wrong, and here's why." That we saw up here. The big one I did a bunch of times here, where you bring up like something you're going to purposely counteract. I'm glad you did an overview of it. You'll get back to it, probably your junior or senior year, because even I don't do the allegory of the cave as a freshman. I think it's very complex when it comes to literature, and I don't want to get into any of those complexities when we don't understand even grammar. I'm waiting to laugh at you. No response. All right, I'm gonna keep going. Here's just one example of the total wrongness of something I tend to be automatically sure of. Everything in my own immediate experience supports my deep belief that I am the absolute center of the universe, the realest, most vivid, and important person in existence. We rarely think about this sort of natural, basic self-centeredness because it's so socially repulsive. But it's pretty much the same thing for all of us. It is our default setting, hardwired into our boards of birth. Think about it. There's no experience you have had that you are not the absolute center of. The world, as you experience it, is there in front of you, behind you, to the left of you, to the right of you, on your TV or your monitor, and so on. Other people's thoughts and feelings have to be communicated to you somehow, but you are your own immediate, urgent real. Yeah, there was nothing microaggression-y about that either, by the way. That was an outright insult. Fix it. Then I won't be able to insult it. This is the device where you spell things wrong on purpose. Your grammar. Yeah. Oh no. Let's see if I taught you anything. What's the literary device where you exaggerate? Do you really think he thinks he's the absolute center of the universe? I think you can go back in Twitch chat if you want, or if texting is easier, that's fine. But now I can have it open. I went out of presentation mode. It was annoying. There you go. I did teach you something. Paper bowl. I know. Because as an honors English student in 9th grade, you should have already known that one. This is a metaphor. Okay. This is a big one. This one is a couple. First we have the one with the absence of conjunction. So that's ascendant. You know, step up my game. Says the one who's sitting here with me at 9:30 at night, learning rhetorical devices that I would say 85% of the rest of the 9th grade does not know. Step up my game. Okay. Right. And then there's also... It's anaphora. I don't care. I was kidding. I knew you were mostly kidding. Oh, this looks like it's epistrophe. Repetition at the end. behind you, yeah. There's also, then it becomes like an afro. This is a big one. He's got like 3 or 4 different devices here. Step up my game? You were kidding about that part. And I'm gonna make note that oh, wait a minute, there's actually a device that combines those two. Forgot about that. Alright, you're forgiven. Scan. Please don't worry that I'm getting ready to lecture you about compassion or other directness or all the so-called virtues. This is not a matter of virtue. It's a matter of my choosing to do the work of somehow altering or getting free of my natural, hardwired default setting, which is to be deeply and literally self-centered, and to see and interpret everything through this lens of self. People who can adjust their natural default setting this way are often described as being well-adjusted, which I suggest to you is not an accidental term. Given the triumphant academic setting here, an obvious question is how much of this work of adjusting our default setting involves actual knowledge or intellect. This question gets very tricky. Probably the most dangerous thing about academic education, at least in my own case, is that it enables my tendency to over-intellectualize stuff, to get lost in abstract argument inside my head, instead of simply paying attention to what is going on right in front of me, paying attention to what is going on inside of me. Okay, this is important for 2 reasons. First, you have the chiasmus, paying attention to what's going on in front of me as opposed to inside of me, which is the device. I'm pretty sure. Actually, let's just unelapse this. But if you look at what he's actually saying here, he's saying, okay, school makes you pay attention and over-intellectualize, make everything abstract. Pay attention to what's in front of you. He's telling you that the answer is going to be literally right on the page. He's going to tell you exactly what his point is at some point. And I have a feeling it has to do with, oh yeah, here. Pay attention to what's in front of you. You know what? I mean, I'm recording it for the girls who can't be here. And they need it because this is actually their homework, so. And they missed the lesson. Like, I did this in class and they missed it. They were out sick that day or something, so. Alright, but Twitch is, like, delaying, right? Like, it's bad slow. Where is it? They were sick. That's annoying. There's nothing I can do about it.
Mimi thinks you have to be super smart to not mess up your taxes.
Shut up. Alright. I'm gonna keep going. As I'm sure you guys know by now, it's extremely difficult to stay alert and attentive instead of getting hypnotized by the constant monologue inside your own head. Maybe happening right now. 20 years after my own graduation, I have come to gradually understand that the liberal arts cliche about teaching you how to think is actually shorthand for a much deeper, more serious idea. Learning how to think really means learning how to exercise some control over how and what you think. It means being conscious and aware enough to choose what you pay attention to, and choose how you construct meaning from experience. Because if you cannot exercise this kind of choice in adult life, you will be totally hosed. Think about the old cliche about, quote, the mind being an excellent servant, but a terrible master. This is just a really important idea. It's kind of a little bit of an aphra in that you've got the repetition of the word choose in there a few times and some parallel syntax, but I think more importantly, it just kind of, if the main idea is that instead of simply paying attention to what's going on in front of me, I'm paying attention to what's going on inside of me, and that's a problem. This is a way I can get around that problem. So it adds to the power of the speech. Because it backs up his initial claim. You still here, Danny? You can hear me? Okay. It's the fact that I can't hear you drives me a little bit crazy. Because I wanted to make sure. Yeah. I don't know if you're here, if you have questions. Like, I feel bad because, I don't know, whatever. It's weird as a teacher for me not to be able to answer her questions, and this is driving me nuts. This, like many cliches, so lame and unexciting on the surface, actually expresses a great and terrible truth. It's not the least bit coincidental that adults who commit suicide with firearms almost always shoot themselves in the head. They always shoot the terrible master, and the truth is that most of these suicides are actually dead long before they pull the trigger. Yes, what? Ugh. What, Danny? What? With you? I know, that's why I moved it over. I can't, it's like messed up. It won't let me turn it off. So, whatever. Great and terrible truth. This is illusion because it's actually mimetic, but okay, so a meme is like when you take something else that exists, you would know of all people. When you take something that's already in existence and you kind of twist it to fit your need. No, we cannot upset. Actually, I hate the Peppy meme. It's annoying. But illusion and mimesis in literature is the same thing. It's when you take an existing line and you twist it or you tweak it to make it funny or make it stupid, or you're referencing in some way, shape, or form something that already existed and you're making it your own. Now, why you're making it your own or what you're hoping to accomplish with that is up to you. So why he's referencing Great and Terrible Beauty here, you have to understand what it is about that story to get it. And I'm not going to get into all that now because it'll take a long time. Yeah, I know. You sent it to me like 800 times the other day. Alright, here we go. We're at the really important part. Not that it isn't all important. I submit to you that this is what the real, no bullshit value of your liberal arts education is supposed to be about. How to keep from going through your comfortable, prosperous, respectable adult life, dead, unconscious, a slave to your head, and to your natural default setting of being uniquely, completely, imperially alone, day in and day out. They may sound like hyperbole or abstract nonsense. Let's get concrete. Let's get some devices, because we just had a whole bunch of, where did it go? Ascendant, like buttloads of it, on top of other things. Comfortable, prosperous, respectable, adult. Here's one. Let's do it as the three so we can see the separateness. Dead and conscious, a slave to your head. Okay, now the fact that we have 3 examples of ascendant in a row is like something funky unto itself. But it's not on my little list, I don't think. Maybe tricolon. But we do have tricolon too. A series of 3 parallel words, phrases, clauses, or statements. So By parallel, it means they build on each other and or related to each other in some way, shape, or form. These are opposite. So they're parallel in a chiastic way, which means backwards. Comfortable, prosperous, respectable. Respectable. Dead, unconscious, slave to your head. Uniquely, completely, imperially alone. This is antithesis. Hyperbole or abstract nonsense is the opposite of concrete. Whoops. The plain fact is that you graduating seniors did not yet have any clue what day in, day out means. There happens to be a whole large part of American life that nobody talks about in commencement speeches. One such part involves boredom, routine, and petty frustration. The parents and older folks here will know all too well what I'm talking about. By way of example, let's say it's an average adult day. You get up in the morning and go to your challenging white-collar college graduate job, and you work hard for 8 or 10 hours, and at the end of the day you're tired and somewhat stressed, and all you want is to go home and have a good supper and maybe unwind for an hour, and then hit the sack because, of course, you have to get up the next day and do it all again. But then you remember there's no food at home. You haven't had time to shop this week because of your challenging job. And so now, after work, you have to get in your car and drive to the supermarket. It's the end of the workday, and the traffic is apt to be very bad. So getting to the store takes way longer than it should. When you finally get there, the supermarket is very crowded because, of course, it's that time of day when all the other people with jobs also try to squeeze in some grocery shopping. And the store is hideously lit and infused with soul-killing muzak or corporate pop, and it's pretty much the last place you want to be. But you can't get in and get out quickly. You have to wander all over the huge, overlit stores, confusing aisles to find the stuff you want. You have to maneuver your junky cart through all these other tired, hurried people with carts, etc., cutting stuff out because this is a long ceremony. And eventually, you get all your supplies. Except now it turns out there aren't enough. I lost my place. Checkout lanes open, even though it's the end of the day rush. So the checkout line is incredibly long, which is stupid and frustrating. But you can't take your frustration out on the frantic lady working the register, who is overworked at a job whose daily tedium and meaninglessness surpasses the imagination of any of us here at a prestigious college. I'm going to keep reading. There's a ton of them in this paragraph, but I'm not even going to bother to stop and annotate or we'll be here for hours. I'm going to keep going, and when we get to the end, we'll go back and we'll pull out a couple more, and maybe I'll have you help me. But anyway, you finally get to the checkout's front line, you pay for your food, and you get told, "Have a nice day," in a voice that is the absolute voice of death. Then you have to take your creepy, flimsy plastic groceries into your cart with the one crazy wheel that folds maddeningly to the left, all the way out through the crowded, bumpy little parking lot. Then you have to drive all the way home through slow, heavy, SUV-intensive rush hour traffic, etc., etc. Everyone here has done this, of course, but it hasn't yet been part of your graduate's actual life routine, day after week, after month, after year. But it will be. And many more dreary, annoying, seemingly meaningless routines besides. But that's not the point. The point is that petty, frustrating crap like this is exactly where the work of choosing is going to come in. Because the traffic jams and crowded aisles and long checkout lines give me time to think. And if I don't make a conscious decision about how to think and what to pay attention to, I'm going to be pissed every time, pissed and miserable every time I have to shop. Because my natural default setting is the certainty that situations are really all about me. About my hungriness and my fatigue and my desire to just get home. And it's going to seem for all the world like everybody else is just in my way. And who are all these people in my way? And look how repulsive most of them are, and how stupid and cow-like and dead-eyed and non-human they seem in the checkout line. Or at how annoying and rude it is that people are talking loudly on cell phones in the middle of the line. And look at how deeply and personally unfair this is. Look. The point is, he's telling me what the main idea of the speech is. I have to stop here because this is very, very important. I'm just going to highlight. Or, of course, if I'm in a more socially conscious liberal arts form of my natural default setting, I can spend time in the end of the day traffic being disgusted all about the huge, stupid lane blocking SUVs and Hummers and V12 pickups burning their wasteful, selfish 40-gallon tanks of gas, and I can dwell on the fact that the patriotic religious bumper stickers always seem to be on the biggest, most disgustingly selfish vehicles, driven by the ugliest. This is an example of how not to think, though, because they clap in the actual speech. Most disgustingly selfish vehicles driven by the ugliest, most inconsiderate, and aggressive drivers. And I can think about how our children's children will despise us for wasting all the future's fuel and probably screwing up the climate, and how spoiled and stupid and selfish and disgusting we all are, and how modern consumer society just sucks, and so forth and so on. You get the idea. If I choose to think this way in a store on the freeway, lots of us fine, lots of us do. Except thinking this way tends to be so easy and automatic that it doesn't have to be a choice. It is my natural default setting. It's the automatic way that I experience the boring, frustrated, crowded parts of adult life when I'm operating on the automatic, unconscious belief that I am the center of the world, and that my immediate needs and feelings are what should determine the world's priorities. The thing is that, of course, there are totally different ways to think about these kinds of things, kinds of situations. In this traffic, all these vehicles stopped and idling in my way. It's not impossible that some of these people in SUVs have been in horrible auto accidents in the past, and to now find driving so terrifying that their therapist has all but ordered them to get a huge, heavy SUV so they can feel safe enough to drive. Or that the Hummer that just cut me off is maybe being driven by a father whose little child is hurt or sick in the seat next to him, and he's trying to get this kid to the hospital, and he's in a bigger, more legitimate hurry than I am. It is actually I who am in his way. Or I can choose to force myself to consider the likelihood that everyone else in the supermarket checkout line is just as bored and frustrated as I am. And some of these people probably have harder, more tedious, and painful lives than I do. Again, please don't think that I'm trying to give you moral advice, or that I'm saying you're supposed to think this way, or that anyone expects you to automatically do it, because it's hard. It takes will and effort, and if you're like me, some days you won't be able to do it, or you just flat out won't want to. But most days, if you're aware enough to give yourself a choice, you can choose to look differently at this fat, dead-eyed, over-made-up lady who just screamed at her kid in the checkout line. Maybe she's not usually like this. Maybe she's been up 3 straight nights holding the hand of the husband who's dying of bone cancer. Or maybe this very lady, is the low-wage clerk at the motor vehicle department who just yesterday helped your spouse resolve a horrific, infuriating red tape problem through some small act of bureaucratic kindness. Of course, yes, Danny, but that's his point. But hold on, let me finish it, and we'll go into it. We'll talk about it. I almost want to say FaceTime, but because I want to be able to hear you. It's easier than reading what you're saying. I lost my place. Of course, none of this is likely here. It just depends on what you want to consider. If you're automatically sure you know what reality is, and you're operating on your default setting, then you, like me, probably won't consider possibilities that are annoying and miserable. But what? Okay, I'm waiting. I know. Yes, I know. I thought of this speech when you started the Paris conversation. And he's going to address that. Yeah, well, his point, you're allowed to have the negative comments. But it's how you choose to handle them, to a degree. He addresses all of this, I promise. Let me get through it. If you're automatically sure you know what reality is, and you are operating on your default setting, then you, like me, probably won't consider possibilities that aren't annoying and miserable. But if you really learn how to pay attention, then you will know there are other options. It will actually be within your power to experience a crowded, hot, slow, consumer hell type situation as not only meaningful, but sacred, on fire with the same force that made the stars, love, fellowship, mystical oneness of all things deep down. Not that that mystical stuff is necessarily true. The only thing that's capital T true is that you get to decide how you're going to try to see it. This, I submit, is the freedom of a real education, of learning how to be well adjusted. You get to consciously decide what has meaning and what doesn't. You get to decide what to worship. And not for anything, Mr. Daniel, but this is what I talk about in class, is it not? You're choosing, even in a story, it's like, okay, I don't care what you tell me, doesn't matter what it means. You tell me what it means as long as you can explain it. You're deciding. Or back it up. Sound a little familiar? You tell me the sky is orange for all you want, as long as you can justify it. Because here's something else that's weird, but true. In the day-to-day trenches of adult life, there's actually no such thing as athletics, as atheism. There's no such thing as not worshiping. Everybody worships. The only choice we get is what to worship. And the compelling reason for maybe choosing some sort of God or spiritual type thing to worship, be it JC or Allah or Yahweh, or the Wiccan Mother Goddess, or the Four Noble Truths, or some inevolvable set of ethical principles, is that pretty much anything else you worship will eat you alive. If you worship money and things, if they are where you tap real meaning in life, you will never have enough. If you never feel like you have enough, it's the truth. Worship your body and beauty and sexual allure, and you will always feel ugly. And when time and age start showing, you will die a million deaths before they finally grieve you. On one level, we know this stuff already. It's all been codified as myths, proverbs, cliches, epigrams, parables, the skeleton of every great story. The whole trick is keeping the truth up front in daily consciousness. Worship over power. You will worship power. You will end up feeling weak and afraid. You will need ever more power over others to numb you to your own fear. Worship your intellect, being seen as smart. You'll end up feeling stupid, a fraud, always on the verge of being found out. But the insidious thing about these forms of worship is not that they're evil or sinful, it's that they're unconscious. They are default settings. You've got some chiasmus here. But I'm really stopping because this one is just a critical point. It's not that they're bad outright. We just don't recognize it. If you're not paying attention, that's like, according to him, that's the greatest sin. This speaks to me an idea. I don't know. This line sticks out to me every single time. And the following. They're the kind of worship you gradually slip into, day after day, getting more and more selective about what you see and how you measure value without ever being aware that it's what you're really doing. That's the one where it's like backwards. No, it's not. Because it's from a Greek word that starts with a C. Kaizo. It's not. See? I don't know where you're getting the K one from. But, no. Who told you that? They're wrong. Whoever it was, they're wrong. Can I move on? Are we okay, Danny? We're almost done, actually. Yeah, I think there's only like a page left. What do you mean, punctuation? Oh, pronunciation. Oh. Okay, that might be like a tomato thing. That was the way I was taught to say it. I don't think that's as big a deal. But that's a good point. I'll actually look it up. I'll look up what the OED says later. And I'll find, maybe mine's an archaic pronunciation. It tends, a lot of things I say tend to be archaic. Alright, I'm gonna start here again. They're the kind of worship you gradually slip into, day after day, getting more and more selective about what you see and how you measure value without ever being fully aware that that's what you're doing. That's I hate when that happens. And so and the so-called real world will not discourage you from operating on your default settings, because the so-called real world of men and money and power comes merrily along in a pool of fear and anger and frustration, and craving and worship of self. Our own present culture has harnessed these forces in ways that have yielded extraordinary wealth and comfort and personal freedom. The freedom of all to be lords of our tiny skull-sized kingdoms, alone at the center of all creation. This kind of freedom has much to recommend it, but of course there are different kinds of freedom, and the kind that is the most precious you will not hear much talk about in the great outside world of wanting and achieving, and whatever he said there was unintelligible. I think he coughed. The really important kind of freedom involves attention, awareness, and discipline, and being able to truly care about other people and sacrifice for them over and over in myriad, petty, unsexy ways every single day. That is real freedom. That is being educated and understanding how to think. The alternative is unconsciousness, the default setting, the rat race, the constant gnawing sense of having had and lost some infinite thing. This is just, I got an idea. I just want to keep reading. I know this stuff probably doesn't sound fun and breezy or blandly inspirational the way a commencement speech is supposed to sound. What it is, as far as I can see, is the capital T truth, with a whole lot of rhetorical niceties striped away. You are, of course, free to think whatever you wish, but please don't just dismiss it as some finger-wagging Dr. Laura sermon. None of this stuff is really about morality or religion or dogma or big fancy questions of life after death. The capital T truth is about life before death. It's about the real value of education, which has almost nothing to do with knowledge and everything to do with simple awareness. Awareness of what is so real and essential, so hidden in plain sight all around us all the time, that we have to keep reminding ourselves over and over. Hold on, before I do that, we have one that I know we haven't seen yet. An ellipsis, which is this thingy. Awareness here. That we have to keep reminding ourselves over and over. This is water. This is water. This is just good organization. Well, it's actually one of the other kinds, but this is how he keeps the speech fluid, consistent, tight when he's so digressive. He tells all of these little other stories. This is how he makes everything stay together. It is unimaginably hard to do this, to stay conscious and alive in the adult world, day in, day out, which means yet another grand cliche turns out to be true. Your education really is the job of a lifetime. It commences now. I wish you way more than luck. And that's where he stops. That's the end of it. So his point is that liberal arts education, it's a liberal arts school's whatever job to teach you how to be aware of the world around you and theoretically put other people's needs before your own. Now, he could have just said that. He probably could have, many speeches, to be perfectly honest with you, many college speeches have said what he's saying in a lot different way, where it's more obvious. I think this is more persuasive. I think the way that this guy does it is the single most effective way I could ever imagine seeing this happen.